Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Arnold. I'm a supervising food inspector with New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. I've been here between 29 and 30 years. I am currently the overseer, supervisor of the home processing unit, as well as the 5A custom slaughterhouse unit. And I work directly with director and management on some policy issues. So I was asked to give this presentation. This is a standard stock presentation. I will not go through every slide, but the slides will be sent to your presenters. So there is some very useful information. But for fear of putting you to sleep as I read every slide, I will go through what I think from my feedback of calls is more pertinent topics or the topics that raise more concern. And by all means, you can ask any questions. I will say I don't have in front of me the forward or reverse buttons that I did when we first prepped for this, but I'm going to do my best. As long as I don't have to go backwards, I'm probably good. Let's see. Okay. So a general overview at the farmers markets, and whether you're a market manager or a vendor to the market, there are requirements to say that you're certified to be there to sell food. And some of those require an inspection or registration, and others do not. So in general, New York State Ag and Markets oversees non-food service vendors at farmers markets. If you are coming to the farmers market with raw agricultural products, we do not require a license from you. And as a farmer, you may or may not be required to register with the produce safety side of my division. But as far as having any type of license or required to be there, you do not need anything from us to be there with raw agricultural products. On the processed food side, I will go into greater depth on the variations of processed and product and packaged foods that would need either a registration or is completely exempt or licensing. And then to further, say that you are required with labeling requirements with your product there. And I emphasize the non-food service in my end because the farmers markets have grown and there are some folks doing food service activities there. I've been to some where people are cooking burgers or foods. Those activities are indeed handled by the Department of Health, requiring a temporary permit through them. Okay, so we go through a lot of definitions here, but what you'll hear the term approved source. And really, foods offered for sale at farmers markets must come from a vendor that is. And we're going to go through this just to give you an overview. So you have to be either licensed by New York State Department of Agriculture Markets with a 20C food processing license or exempt from the 20C food processing license. Just so you know, two quick things that are exempt, obviously home processors who are required to be registered. And then there are maple syrup and honey products that are not required to be registered with us who may be there. You have your permitted folks under Part 2 of our dairy division, permitted by the health department, a local health. They could be there if their meat is processed under the USDA and they're selling directly at farmers markets. You could be there with meat that's processed under the 5A slaughterhouse exemption, or you could be there with the 1,000 bird exemption that's covered under it's an exemption under Article 5A, in which case you would not be inspected, but your birds are legal to sell at farmers markets. Properly licensed or permitted and inspected by the appropriate regulatory agencies. Okay. Out-of-state products. Vendors selling honey or maple syrup made out of state do not need to be licensed or permitted. Farmers market vendors are required to provide a copy of their food license or permit upon request by the market manager. So again, on an overall picture, there are some folks that do not or will not have any kind of license or registration with us, and it's probably just as important for market managers as it is the vendor to know that. So a simple conversation or a check with us could verify that. Okay. So I'm going to pause right here. And can one of the present, I do not have my arrows to see my presentation or flick it. So I'm hitting buttons and I don't know how fast. Is there a way I get access to that? I don't know where it went. When we warmed up for this, I had it.
Hey, John, if you use the arrow keys on your keyboard, I think it advances the presentation.
Okay. Let's
Also, the
see.
scroll button on the mouse.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So again, I'm going to go through some of these relatively quick. Um, 5A is our 5A slaughterhouse license. That's an in-state program. Um, meat meat should be either the 1,000 bird exemption from a 5A facility, from a 20C facility, or from a USDA. And if you're coming from another state, you have to be under inspection. And in general, 5A birds, amenable species, are only to be sold within New York State. If you are a 5A license to do exotic animals such as rabbit, bison, those technically can travel to other states. Okay, our food processing license is a very broad license. It covers lots of different food activities. Our breweries and wineries, those are exempt if they're just making those farm distinct liquors and alcohols, but they do get inspected. So they generally would have an inspection if that was asked of them. Again, our maple syrup producers and honey producers do not get any type of license or registration from us. Our home processors would have a registration. And then hops, same thing. They would be inspected. They are exempt from licensing though. Cottage food laws. Again, this is a standard slide that was presented by created by my department. That language is used in this slide because that is the customary language across the country. However, we do not use that in New York State. So cottage food laws, we recognize home processors in New York State under a certain criteria of products that can be made. We do not accept products coming in from any out-of-state cottage food products. So each state has their own rules to this. They tend to call theirs cottage food laws. Ours is the home processor exemption. Okay, I'm not going to define farmers markets. I think most of you know what those are. And just so you know, home processing, it does require someone to register with us. They will have a form that is approved by our department to show you. And if they don't, then they may not be registered. Our website also updates, although not every time an application gets processed does it get updated. It's more periodically. But our update, you can look on our website and confirm if someone's an approved home processor. With that said, if you were just approved in the last month or two, it might be necessary to actually see the registration form. Not going to go over market. Okay. Just see something. Okay. That's right. Okay, so this is basically saying out-of-state product that comes into a New York market should be licensed or permitted by the appropriate regulatory agencies. That makes sense. So a lot of the exemptions, like I said, home processing exemption, 1,000-bird exemption, those cannot go across state lines. Okay. It's posted here about the milk permits and how you can and sell those items. We have a different dairy division, and if anybody has any questions on that, you certainly can ask them, and we will get you an answer. Again, this goes into a lot of definitions and items that I think I'm going to go through quickly for the sake of time. This presentation will be available if you wanted to see it. If anybody has questions on what they do and how to make sure that they're um, an approved source, they can contact us and we definitely will get them the correct information. But going through, I think some of the biggest items are baked goods and home processed goods that are making their way into markets, or at least from the aspect of what we hear on our end of how many people are registering. The home processing registration has literally exploded from the pandemic days, where we were processing maybe 300 a year to about 2,000 a year. So it has really grown in the last couple years, and our goal is to, get everybody processed, but in the same vein, let them know the limitations of being a home processor, and that is a challenge that we work on every day. Okay. So basically, baked goods are products made at homes. Your jams and jellies are items that have to be deemed non-potentially hazardous. They cannot have or require refrigeration as a form of safety, and they certainly can't be sold across state lines. Okay. Again, reiterating, a license is not required to sell fruits and vegetables that have been grown and harvested. Again, that is growing and selling raw agricultural commodities. If they get further processed to any degree, if you were doing fruit cups, that would be a licensable activity. Cultivated mushrooms, again, cultivated mushrooms fall into a raw agricultural commodity and do not need a license to sell. Okay. Now, I will say if you package them, if you read our regs, we do want perforated holes in the packaging so the mushrooms can breathe. Okay. Again, mills, grains, rolled oats, popcorn, seeds. Okay. They may be sold if the products are milled, processed in a facility that meets one of the New York State regulatory requirements. So they have to either be a 20C permitted by the health department, out of state licensed or permitted. So that's it. And if they made something that was approved by a home processor, then that would be permitted. Okay. Again, meat and poultry, this is something I definitely know a good amount about personally from working over the years in this arena. So if anybody is a 5A facility or somebody who has their animals slaughtered at a USDA facility and then do a retail cut up, but then go to farmers markets, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out. But again, yes, you can have your animals slaughtered at a USDA facility, packaged with USDA products, sell it at a farmer's market. You can bring them back to your place, butcher them, and operate under 20C, and then go to farmers markets as long as you're not wholesaling it, you are retailing it. And then the 5A slaughterhouse allows you to either be a 5A slaughterhouse or have your birds processed at a 5A slaughterhouse and then resold. Again, emphasizing the temperature of 41 degrees, either frozen or refrigerated, is how you should be selling these products. Same with seafood. Eggs. If you sell eggs, again, New York's requirement is for the ambient temperature to be 45 or below. That's how the rules are written. So they have to be stored in a ambient temperature of 45 or below. Okay, maple syrup and honey. Again, folks who produce their own maple syrup and honey are exempt from licensing. I do know quite a few have included some aspects to that when they do certain home processing goods. I have had feedback that farmers market managers want something from them. So some of those folks will also be home processors because they make certain items with the maple or honey. But again, they are exempt, and the exemption itself has grown slightly. So there might be some more information out in a guide real soon on that. I don't have that for you today. Again, labeling is important, that they're labeled right. And we have a circular on maple and honey that you can access as well on our website. Real simple. If you're making acidified foods, there's none of that to be made at home. If someone makes anything like pickles and they say they're a home processor, no, they would not be allowed. No ifs, ands, or buts. Those folks would need to be inspected under 20C, again, as it says, or a health department permit. Okay. Jams, jellies, marmalades, those can be made as a home processor, so you could see that. Some of those folks do get 20C licenses as well because they make, again, fruit with, they make the peppers or vegetables in there, or low sugar. So those folks were asked to get licenses, so we could inspect them. So if someone has that line of product in front of you and they say they're a home processor, please be advised that the more exotic jams and jellies would not be approved as a home processor. Now, this was a new one several years back, in which cheese cutting and wrapping at farmers markets was indeed added as an exemption. My guess is those that engage in this are very familiar with this exemption, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. Raw milk is absolutely unequivocally not allowed to be sold at a farmer's market. Raw milk is legal in this state, but the procedure in which you can be certified to sell raw milk, it means that you wouldn't be able to do it at a farmer's market. Okay. Again, this is valuable information throughout my presentation, but to read it, I might put you all to sleep. It has some very useful information, and you can certainly go through it and determine what best suits your operation and what you need to be aware of or ask further questions on. Kombucha, same thing. You'll see that out there. If you make kombucha, you're licensed under us. There's a chance if you have too much alcohol in your product, you also have to be registered with the state liquor authority. The majority of kombucha people are not, because they have a process to stop the alcohol fermentation, but they would be licensed. There's no home processing of kombucha. Okay, and again, alcohol products are generally covered under the New York State Liquor Authority. They oversee the sale of all alcohol. We inspect alcohol manufacturing facilities from a sanitary standpoint, but the SLA registers the products, registers the labels, and gives the license that permits folks to sell it in different ways. Okay. Hemp may be sold as food provided it is manufactured and or processed in compliance with department regulations. Again, I'll emphasize hemp is clearly different than cannabis in this arena. So hemp, and then wild foraged foods, excluding mushrooms and game. Wild forage foods such as fruits, ramps, and fiddleheads may be offered for sale provided they are not adulterated, properly identified and stored and handled in a manner to prevent adulteration. That is probably a limited amount of people that would be engaged in that, but it is good to know. Okay, now we'll get into the arena of foods not allowed. And this, let's see, I mentioned raw milk. Okay, no CBD products. No food or beverage product may be made or sold in New York State if it contains CBD or THC as a food additive, or an ingredient. Now, that may change in the future, but that's where that stands right now. Okay, again, if you store a lot of pickled products and tomato sauces that don't have refrigeration, they're shelf stable, you definitely would need to be licensed to make that. You cannot be a home processor. Okay, raw untreated apple cider. There is a law in New York State that if you retail apple cider, that it has a 5-log reduction. Basically pasteurization or UV or high pressure processing. That does not apply if it's a mixed juice that is strictly for apple cider. To that vein, though, if someone is a juice seller at the farmer's market, they would need to be licensed by New York State, and they would, if they sell raw juices, they would have to be covered under what we call the retail juice exemption, and it would require a warning sticker on their product. Okay, Sprouts. So I'm going to read this. Sprouts are considered a potentially hazardous food and may not be repackaged at a farmer's market. They may be sold if they are prepackaged at the properly licensed and inspection production location. Packaged and labeled sprouts may be sold provided they are maintained under refrigeration at an internal temperature of 41 or less at the farmer's market, and the product is protected from contamination. So what that means is you can't come with a big display of sprouts and then be putting it into containers on site. Okay. Okay. Again, bulk foods in general, food sold at farmers markets must be sold as a packaged product. Bulk foods, not including uncut fruits or vegetables, not including uncut fruits and vegetables, may not be packaged by the consumer or the vendor per customer request or order at farmers markets. Such items such as grains, candies, herbs, and spices, etc., which may be repackaged into smaller containers from a larger amount, must be packaged in containers at a licensed and inspected facility. If customers often purchase varying size containers, the repackaged containers can be of mixed sizes, weights, and counts. So you can come prepared with varying different things and certainly weigh them to order at time of sale. And this is just a heads up. Periodically, we do go to farmers markets. We are more complaint based. So if someone made a complaint on a particular vendor or market is when we would generally arrive, but we can sample. And just as a point of notice, we offer to pay for anything we sample. So if an inspector met you, they would show their ID, they would probably give you their business card, they would pay for the product they're going to sample, get some information from you, try to be as non-disruptive as possible to your flow of business, but we do sample sometimes at markets. Okay, and then just a real sanitation thing about washing hands. The setups you might see gravity fed based systems at markets, and your general sanitizing and washing of your hands here in some written format. Okay, cross contamination. Obviously, you're dealing with different foods, different vendors have different foods. So keep in mind if you're dealing with meats and you also have some non-meat items, how you store them in the cooler with limited cooler space. You want to do in a way that prevents some cross contamination. How you may handle things on the counter, even taking out of the cooler. Keep those things in mind. And labeling. Oh, products are required to be labeled if it's a packaged good. Common name of the product, the name and address of the manufacturer, the net weight of contents, and the ingredient statement for the product. We have a nice handout on our website if you had any questions on how to label a product. Again, a recommendation, nowadays it's becoming easier and easier to find some mechanical refrigeration as opposed to ice. I myself have a refrigerated cooler that can plug in to a power cord and it doesn't need ice. There are plenty of economical ways to do that. And here's basically our guide to everything that is ag and markets. Does anybody have any questions?